Hello and welcome to Developers Den by Newton School. I am 𝐏𝐚𝐲 𝐀𝐟𝐭𝐞𝐫 developer at 𝐿𝐿. And in today's video series that we are starting, we are going to create UI components, lots and lots of UI components. Think of it more like a material UI library or Bootstrap library where you just import the UI components and you can use in your projects. So this will be a series of video where you can learn how to build reusable components, reusable UI components that you can use anywhere by just passing the props in your project. So think of it like if you want to create a drop down, you want to create different types of buttons, you want to create accordions, you want to create tables, anything, be it anything, we'll be covering everything in this series of videos. So before starting, if you haven't liked the video, do like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe it so that you don't miss any of the videos. And let's go. And also big thanks to Newton School for helping me making this video. If you are into coding, if you are into web development, do check out their platform. They have some good programs where you can learn coding, you can get a job, and then you don't have to pay anything before you get a job. So this is it. Let's get started with the very first video where we are going to create a reusable drop down. We'll focus on the UI, we'll focus on making the drop down reusable, and first of all and best of all, we'll focus on learning. Let's go. So let's get started. Let me give you a quick demo of what we're going to build in this video. So as I told you, we are going to build a drop down, and so this is the component that we have. As you can see, we have a label. Why do you like Developers Den? This could be any label, and this is optional, totally optional. This component that we will be building is totally reusable, totally customizable, and everything. So you can see this drop down menu is working perfectly. This icon is changing based on whether the options are open or not, and then you can click on any of the option. On hover, we have this different colors so that you can see that whatever option that you are hovering on is selectable, and then you can select any of the option, and this option can be accessed by the parent component as well. So this is the drop down that we'll be building in this video. Let's get started. So very first thing that we'll be doing is open our terminal. So we can open our terminal. I'll increase the size so that you can see, and we'll give the command. We'll go to the destination folder that we have to build. I'll go to my desktop and let's say npx create React app, and let's call this as UI library, or you can call it anything. For now, we can call it as dropdown. So what create React app will do is this will give me a template to start with my React project. You can use create React app whenever you want to create a React project, or you can start from scratch as well. But most of the developers prefer using create React app CRA, which is an npm package, so that they get a pre-made template so that their development is very fast. So this will take a moment. Till then, I'll also tell you about the color scheme that I'm using. I'm using a very subtle theme, and in future we can implement dark theme on this website as well. So do keep watch all the videos in this series. Do watch all the videos in this series so that you'll know how I'm going to implement dark mode in this particular component. So this will take a moment or two. Till then, I'll pause this video and we can resume. Perfect. Now we have our create React app application created. So as you can see, this is the drop down that we have created from npm package create React app. We'll open this in our Visual Studio Code. You can use any code editor that you want, doesn't matter, as long as you're comfortable with it. I personally prefer Visual Studio Code because of the speed and the accessibility that I get. Also, we have a lot of extensions, so these helps a lot in faster development. I'll increase the size of my code editor so that you can see whatever I'm coding. So this is the template that you get. You can see these are so many files that are already given. I'll quickly go and I'll erase everything. I don't need this, and I'll be using one extension which is React snippets. So what this does is I just have to write keywords, and some of the templates are automatically created. So I'll use RAFCE, which is React arrow function export component, and this will give me a component pre-made. So these are the lines that you have to write. And if I save this, also I'll open up my terminal by command J, or you can use command T or command J in your laptop, whatever you're using. So I can say npm start. This will open up my server and on port 3000. So if you refresh it, you can see this app is being shown, and on top we have this create React app in the title. So that's it. Also, I'll import the CSS file, which is import app.css. Now we have our CSS file in this. I'll close my terminal. We don't need this. So also I'll shrink this. Now let's start creating the folders. So the very first folder that we'll be creating in a React app is the component. Obviously, React is all about components. The better you can break your website, you can break your design into components, the more reusable and more scalable that is. So inside my component, in this video, we're going to create just one component, that is dropdown. So I'll create a folder called dropdown, and inside dropdown, I'll create one more file, which is index.js. So this is the code structure that I'll be following. There will be an index file for every component, index file for every page, which will be the entry point for that particular file or component. So again, I'll say RAFCE, and I'll change the name to dropdown. Also, if you're using React, make sure that your components are capitalized so that the React doesn't gives you an error. And also I'll create a style file here, which will be dropdown.css. You can see the naming convention that I'm following for my CSS files. I'm just giving the name of the component, but in small case. So I'll import this here, import dropdown.css. So now my CSS file is also imported. I'll import this dropdown component inside my app folder, app component, drop down. Perfect. So now inside my app file, now imagine my app as some website which is going to use my drop-down component. So there are few things that the website have to pass, or the parent component we can say has to pass. The very first thing that website should know, whatever we are selecting inside our drop-down component should be accessible in the parent file. So for this we are going to use const a state. State is like a variable, you can say. So I'll say selected option, and we can use set selected option. So this is use state hook given by React. So what use state does is it's a hook by React for functional components, where you get a state and a state setter. Whatever value you will pass to this particular function, it will be set in this particular state. So use state, make sure that you are importing it, and the initial value of my state, for now I'll just keep it as an empty string so that nothing is selected. We'll change this later for sure. So okay, now what else do you need to pass? You need to pass some options that suppose if I'm importing this particular dropdown in any of the component, I'll have to pass some options which will be shown in the dropdown. So for this, I'll create one more folder. Let's call it as common, and inside my common, I'll create one folder again, which is data. So this data file will contain all the raw data, all the mock data that we are going to use. So I'll call this as dropdown.js, and here let's export some an array. Let's say export const, and this is drop down options. So this could be any option that you are going to pass to your drop down component. And for now, let us just give some random options. This is awesome. So I'm going to create a drop down for my own channel where I'll be asking, why do you like developers den, right? So the options could be because it is awesome. The second option could be because it is super awesome. So it is super awesome, super awesome. The third option could be love the content. The fourth option could be it is unique. And the fifth option could be no reason as such. You can put any option that you want. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to make a reusable component. So I'm just showing you how you can pass an entire array as the options. And so the final option can be do I really like it. So yeah, these are the options that we'll be using. So again, I'll go to my app.js, and from here only I'll pass the options. So what I'll do is I'll pass all of these things as props to my dropdown component. So the first prop that I'll be passing is options. So options, you can call it anything. You can call it drop down options, you can call it selectable values, you can call it anything, because inside our drop down component we'll use this particular name as only. So we can call it as drop down options. So whatever drop down options that we just created inside our drop down file, we exported it and we passed it inside our drop down component. So these are the options that we have. Next thing is the selected option. My component should have access to this particular state so that it can show that particular value in the component. So I'll just pass it as it is. So in React, you can pass this state. You can also pass this particular function as prop. So this is the best thing about React. You can pass anything as prop to the child component. So this particular function as well, set selected option. So also, if you remember in the demo, I showed you that we have a label, but it is optional. So also we can pass a label. You can call it anything. You can call it heading. You can call it drop down name or anything. So I'm just passing the question here. Why do you like the developers den? So this is the particular label that I'll be showing on top of my drop down component. So these are the props that I need from my app file. Also, now that we are on our app file only, let's give it a class name and call it app so that we can style it better. By going in my app, these are the default styles that the React application gave to us. I'll clear this out and I'll create the class that we just did, give.app. And inside this, I want everything to be display as flex. So flexbox is a great CSS property to learn. If you are a front-end developer, you should be aware of flexbox and grid, because if you know how flexbox and grids work, You can create any customizable layout, you can create responsive layouts and everything. Also, we'll try to make this particular component responsive as well. So the first property that I'll be giving it is a display as flex. The next property that I want is justify content as center. So what justify content does is, so whenever you give the property of flex to a component or a div or something, there are two axes. One is principal axis and other is the secondary axis. So justify content will make everything to the center of the principal axis. So by default, the principal axis is the horizontal line and the secondary axis is the vertical line. So by justify content, everything will be on the center of the horizontal plane. The next is align items. What align items will do, it will center everything in the vertical plane. So the next property that I want is minimum height of my application that I want is to be of 100 view height. Similarly, the minimum width I want to be of 100 view width. So it will take the width of the entire screen. Now, also, we need some fonts. As you can see, everything is in the center of my application. Now I need a font. So I'll go to Google Fonts. So Google Fonts are free to use in your application and they're very easy to use. So I'm going to use IBM Plex Mono. If you like any other font, you can use that one. IBM Plex, not Flex, IBM Plex Mono. So this particular font I like this. So you have to just select, remove everything. You just have to select the font, whichever values you want. So I want the regular one and I want the font weight of 600, font weight of 700. So I want these three fonts from IBM Plex. So I'll just copy this particular link and I'll go to my index file here and I'll import it. So once these are imported, you have to rerun your server so that these files are recreated. Also, now that we are here only, I'll replace the title from React app to Dropdown and also developers done. So okay, so now what is happening, we have changed the title and we have changed the font for this entire file as well. We need to do one more thing. We can change the description of our website as well. Website created using create react app, we can call it as reusable UI component. So now the description of the website is also changed, but again we have to rerun the server. So what we will do is we'll close it by command C. The server is stopped running. Now we'll say npm start and our server will be running again. As you can see, the title of the application is changed. Now that we have imported the font from Google Fonts, we have to use it inside our application as well. So what I'll do is inside my .app class name, I'll say that font family, or we can just copy it from here. You can go to Google Fonts and copy this particular line, font family IBM Plex Mono, and the second one is the fallback font. So you can see that we are using IBM Plex Mono, which is the default font. But whenever you are on a website where you are importing this particular font, if the net is not working or if the internet is slow, we don't want the user to have a blank screen or there should not be any font. So therefore we are using a fallback font as well, which is monospace in this case. You can use serif, you can use sans serif, you can use any of those, but make sure that you are giving a fallback space, which is by default available in all the computers. So next to our font family, we have to use the colors as well. So I'll go to my common folder and I'll create one more folder here and we'll call it styles. So inside my styles, I'll say variables.css. Inside my variables.css, I'm going to use all the hex colors that I'll be using on my website. So the best part about using variables for color is that tomorrow if you want to change the entire UI of your website, you just have to change the variable values in this file. You don't have to go to every CSS file and change the hex code there. And also if you want to implement dark mode tomorrow, it's just a work of 3-4 lines. Therefore, you should use variables for your CSS colors. So the very first variable name that I'll be using is background. So the background value that I'll be using is hashtag EBEDFF. If you like any other color, you can use that one. There is no hardcode value for this. Whatever UI you like, make sure you're sticking to it throughout your website. So I'm going to use a darker shade of this blue color as well. So I'll call it as blue dark. And the hex value for this will be hashtag 5C6 5C6DFF. So this is a little darker shade of blue. You can see the color is reflected here as well. So I'm using a snippet for this as well. Sorry, I'm using a extension for this as well. You can use that one. So also I need a faded gray to show a lighter shade of text, which will be a little softer. So this will be hashtag 818181. So this is a little lighter shade of gray. Next, I want the default color, which is my white color. So this will be obviously hashtag FFFFF and one more F. And finally, one more default color, which is black. So the black is hashtag 000 0, 0. So these are the colors that I'll be using. Also, if you'll notice that since my entire website is a very light shade website, we do need a white shadow as well. So I'll declare a white shadow here as well. I'll show you where I'm going to use this particular shadow value. So white shadow, I'm going to use 0 pixel, 0 pixel. So these are the shorthand notations for horizontal, vertical, blur, radius, and everything. If you want to create beautiful shadows, you can go online and you can just search for CSS shadow maker, CSS shadow generator. So on these websites, you can experiment how these values are changing and what kind of shadow you are getting. You can change the color from here. You can just select white. You can select white and you can change the shadow color, opacity, spread radius, blur radius, everything, and you can see the shadow will keep on changing here. So make sure that you use these kinds of website to create beautiful layouts as well. So okay, and also the color that I want is RGBA, a value of 173, value of 182, 182, 255, and an opacity of 0.25. Perfect. So this is the white shadow that I'm going to use on my website. You can use any value that you want, any color you can experiment with. So this is it. Let me just give one more property. Inside my app file, I want the background color to be of variable uh, variable background, but you'll see that this is not working right now. If I'll go to my website, you can see the background color is not changing. So the reason for this is that we haven't imported the file yet, the CSS file. So in CSS as well, many people don't know, but we can import other CSS files. So you can just write import @import, and you can go to the folder where you have written the variable. So perfect. Make sure that you are giving a semicolon in the end, otherwise this will give you an error. Perfect. Now you can see the background color is changed. So this is it. This is the entire thing that we have to do inside our app file. Now I'll go to my dropdown component and I'll start building the dropdown component. So inside my dropdown component, I'll close the terminal again. In the index file, the very first wrapper that I have, I'll give it a class name of dropdown. Perfect. So if you'll notice that we had a title as well, where I was just saying that this is Dropdown Developers Den. This is just to showcase that this is built by the Developers Den channel. If you want to keep it, you can keep it. If you want to delete it, you can delete it. Doesn't matter. So I'll just write here Dropdown by Developers Den, by developers 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 Den. So you can see that this is the title that I'm going to use. We can give it a class name of heading. So class name of heading, and next to it, let's start building the actual component. But if you'll remember that we also passed a prop called label. So first of all, what I'll do is I'll import all the props that I had. So the props here, I'm going to use JavaScript destructuring. So I'll say const, whatever I passed in my prop, I'm going to use this here. So the label was passed inside my prop. The next thing was a selected option. So I can say selected option, and here is the selected option. The third thing was a function to set the value of this particular state, which was set selected option, and the final thing was options, the all the values that we are going to use in our dropdown. So I can destructure it from props. You can also copy it as props dot label, props dot selected option, but from ES6 the destructuring method is more preferable. So now here, what I'll say that so inside JSX, so what I'm writing right now is JSX. So inside JSX, if you want to use JavaScript, so you can see this is plain HTML, right? But if you want to use some JavaScript inside this, you just have to open a curly braces and then you can write JavaScript here. So I'll say if label is available and. So this is AND operator. This only work, the right hand of this AND operator is only computed if the left hand side is true. So which means that if we have passed some label value, then only it will see what is written next to the and operator. So if the label is passed as a prop, then the next component will be rendered. If nothing is passed as the label, the next component won't be rendered. So the label, and we'll say a div. So a div, inside this div, whatever label we are passing, we'll render it here. The spelling is correct. So now if you'll see, why do you like developers then? This label was passed and this is being rendered. So let's give this a class name as well. I'll give it a class name of dropdown label. Dropdown label. Dropdown label. Perfect. So yes, what we can do is now we can just style these two things. First of all, the heading and the dropdown label. So inside my CSS file, the first thing that we have is the heading. So for this, I want the font size to be of 48 pixel. I want the font weight to be a little darker, so I'll say font weight of 600. Now if you'll see, this looks good. I just want to change the color of this particular heading, so I'll say color, and I'll give it a variable value of dark blue, so blue dark. And finally, I want it to have some space between this heading, because this is just for showcase, we are not going to use it as a reusable component. So I want some space between the label and the heading, so I'll say margin bottom to be of 32 pixel. So if you'll notice, this is how it looks. So the heading is done. Next up we have the drop down label, so I'll say drop down label, and inside this drop down label I want the margin from top still some margin, because this particular component from this point we are going to use in our website, so I want some space there. So from margin top I want it to have 16 pixel of spacing, and the next thing is I want the font size to be of 24 pixel. That's it. The label part is also done. We'll go to our index.js file, and let's start building the actual dropdown component that we have next to label. So we'll open up a div, and we'll call this as dropdown component. We'll call this as dropdown component, dropdown component. Now inside my dropdown component we have two things. One is the search like bar that you see, where you select the option which is visible to you, where you have the icon as well, and next to it, in the bottom section, we have all the options that are available. So the first div that we will create is, we'll call this as class name as selected options wrapper. So I'll call this as selected options wrapper. Selected options wrapper. So inside this wrapper, I'm going to put the value of whatever option that is selected and the caret icon. So for whatever option that is selected, we just have this particular prop here. So I'll say that a div, whatever is the, sorry, if you want to write JavaScript, you have to put it inside curly braces. So whatever is the selected option, that will be visible. Since nothing is selected right now, because from your app file you can see nothing is selected, nothing is visible here. What we can do is, by default, if you have seen on many websites, the very first option in the dropdown is selected. We can do this as well. So dropdown options, which is an array. So from the array we can use the 0th index value. So if you'll now see, drop down option, selected option, and this is passed here, selected option. Okay, the spelling is incorrect, therefore it's not showing. Perfect. Selected option, selected option. Now if you'll see, here in our drop down file, selected option is passed and this is visible here. Let me just see why it is not being shown. So I can say console.log selected option. So we can see whatever value is being passed is correct or not. So if we'll go here, it is undefined. So we can see correctly that the value that we are getting here is not correct. So what we can do is, I'll again go to my app.file, and the spelling is incorrect here. Perfect. Now you can see it is awesome. The first option is correctly rendered on my screen. So in my dropdown component again, so next to the selected option, whatever option is selected, we have a caret icon, the upper caret and the lower caret. So whenever my dropdown options are closed, you have to show a lower caret, and whenever the the options are open, you have to show an upper arrow. So what we'll do to make sure that, so how will we know that whether the options are open or not? Obviously we are going to use some state, we are going to use some value variable. So for this I'll create a state here. I'll call it as const is options visible, which means that whether my options are open or not. So the second thing inside use state is obviously a setter function, which is set is options visible. So I can call this from use state. Use state is a hook, as I told you earlier as well. So the default value will be false, because by default the options won't be open. So I'll again open a curly braces to write some JavaScript here. So I'll say that is options available, is options visible. So if the options are visible, now I'm going to use a ternary operator. So I have to write a question mark. So if this value is true, then show this particular icon. So for icons, I'm going to use tabular icons. So this is an open source website which you can use. I love this website. The icons available here are perfect for your personal project. So the size I want to be of 20 pixel. The color value that I want is this particular color value. From my variables, I'll copy this value and I'll paste it inside tabular icon. I'll close this as well. So here If I'll paste this, you can see the color of the icons have changed. So the icon that I want is carrot down, not carrot. The icon that I want is chevron down, chevron down. This one. So this is the down arrow. So suppose whenever my options are not visible, I want it to have a downward arrow. So I'll paste it. Now when my options are visible, so I have to write a colon and then the visibles arrow. So chevron up. If I'll paste it here and save it, you can see this is much better visible now. Is options visible, then show this particular icon. If it is not visible, then show this particular icon. So if we'll go to developers, then you can see that by default, okay, I have reversed it. So what I can do is I can cut this particular value and command X, and I can just paste it here, and I'll cut this particular value and command X, and I'll paste it inside here. And if I save this, now you can see perfect, this is working perfect. So now that we have created an option selector, we just have to create something to show the options. So now if I'll save this from this particular point, so now that we have the chevron icons here, as you can see, we have to implement a functionality on this as well. So what we can do is, whenever we click on this particular wrapper, we can implement an on-click functionality. So suppose I just click on this particular entire the selected option or the bar, the option should open and close. So what I can do is, I can say uh, set set is options visible to whatever the value is not. So we'll toggle it. So it is, if it is open and if I click on this particular selected value, it should close, and vice versa. So I can say whatever not is the value of is options available visible. So you can see it better now. Now if I go here, you can see the chevron is down. If I click on this, it's up. If I click on it, it's down. So this is how it works here. So next to this, I will now start creating the options. So here, but before this, let's quickly go and style the entire wrapper and everything. So for this, I'll go to my CSS file, and inside the CSS file, the parent component is dropdown component. So dropdown component, this is the class name that we have. So for here, the first property that I want is obviously the display to be as flex. So flex, I like flex using because it gives you the entire freedom to create the responsive layouts. So justify content as center, so that everything is center, not center, flex start. I'll say flex start. The next property that I want is align items to be center, so that everything is vertically center. Next to it, I want the background color to be of white. So background color to be of white. So if I'll see white, now if I'll show you, this is the particular drop down main thing that you see on any of the website. So if you click on this, you can see the caret icon is changing. So this is how it works. Now next to it, I want it to have a box shadow as well. So if you'll remember, we gave a variable value to white shadow. So I'll say the box shadow to be of variable white shadow. Now if you'll see, it has a subtle shadow which is visible on the website. Now next to it, I want it to have a height of 100%, so that the content is entirely taken. And next to the height, I want it to have a position of relative, so that now whenever I have to style my options, will be relative to this. So two properties of position, relative and absolute, are very important to learn if you are a front-end developer. So if we give the parent the property of relative, we can give the property of absolute to a child, and we can place it wherever we want with respect to the particular parent. So next to the position relative, I want it to be a little rounded. So I'll say border radius of 12 pixel will work here. Next to the border radius of 12 pixel, I will also have a color. So color for the entire text that is in the component, I want it to be a faded gray, so that it's lighter on the eyes, faded gray. Now if you'll see, this is the faded gray that we have. So next to the color, I want a space between the top label and this. So I'll say margin top of 16 pixel will do, and a padding as well. So if you see, the entire content is sticking to the ends. So for this, what I can do is, here I can give a padding. So I'll use the second notation for padding, which is 12 pixel and 4 pixel. So 24 pixels. So 12 pixel is from top and bottom, and 24 pixel is from left and right. So this is how it looks right now. Also, if you'll see, the next thing that I have is obviously the cursor pointer. So I want it to look like it is selectable. So I want my cursor to behave as a pointer. And finally, the font size, it's by default 16. I want it to be of 18 pixel. Perfect. Now this is looking great. Next thing that we have is the selected options wrapper. So this thing, the button and the text is inside the wrapper for selected option. So for this, I want the selected options wrapper. Selected options wrapper. Here, I want just three properties. First is display it as flex so that everything is in a row, as you can see. Now I want it to stick to the extreme ends. So I'll say justify content space between. So it will be sticking to the extreme ends of the wrapper. And this is right now happening because we haven't given it a width. So if I'll give it a width of 100%, you can see now the button and the text is at the two ends of the flex. Now finally, what I want everything is to be vertically centered. So align items as center. Now if you'll see, this is looking perfect. If I click on this, the icon is changing. Now next to this, let's start creating the drop down options. So let's go to the index file, and inside the index file, again, if only the options are passed from the parent, so is options visible, then only we have to show the options. So again, I'm telling you, this is the AND operator that we are going to use. And inside this div, let's give this div a class name. I'll give it a class name of dropdown options. Dropdown options. Now, as you can see, this is options for plural, and for each individual option, we are going to use the class name of dropdown option. You can give any class name, but make sure that the class names are meaningful so that if you read it tomorrow or if some other developer reads it, they understand it. Now, again, I'll open up a curly brace and I'll check if the options that are passed from the parent element, which means the options that are passed from here, which is these dropdown options, this is an array, right? So we have to check if the value of this array, the length of this array is at least greater than 0, then only show the options. Otherwise, there is no point showing in options, and this might give you an error as well. So if this particular thing is true, which means if the length is greater than 0, then only options.map. So map is a array function that we have in JavaScript. It will take individual item from the options array. I'm calling it option. You can call it item. You can call it anything, clickable, material, XYZ, anything you can call it. So for each of this, I want to return another div. So, and inside this div, I'll just write as option. Now, if you'll see, if I open it, you can see these are shown here because we haven't styled it yet, but these are all the options. If I click on this, these are hidden. So our drop-down functionality is working correctly. Now we just have to style these things. So what I can do is I can give this a class name of drop-down option. Class name of drop-down option. Perfect, so that we can style it now. Also, if I click on any of the option, I want this to be selected. So what I want to do here is, so on click, I'll just say on click, and let's call a function here. Let's say handle selected. So for the handle selected, I'll just pass the option value. So whatever option is this, I'm passing it as here. It's giving an error because we don't have a function called handle selected right now. So here we can declare a plane is going, so we can wait for the noise to pass. So cool, I guess now it's good. So const handle selected. Now this is a function which will take an option as the param here. And inside this, what I want to do two things. I want to set selected option as whatever option we are clicking on. And next thing, I want to close the options, because if you have seen in a dropdown, whenever you click on an option, the other options are automatically hidden, or which means the other options are, the tab is closed. So for this, I'll say set is options visible as false. Perfect. Now if you will see, if I click on love the content, the selected option is changing and it's also closing automatically. Perfect, no reason as such. So now what I want to do is I just want to style it. So the coding part is done. We just have to write the CSS for these two classes and we are done here. So for drop down options, if you'll remember, options is the wrapper which is containing all the options that are available. So I want it to have a position of absolute. Now this is having a position of relative. So this will be positions in a relative position to this particular drop-down component. So if I click on absolute, you can see this is coming on top. Perfect. Now the other styles that I want is to, from bottom, I want it to be minus 10 pixel, which means that if I'll save it, you will see what I'm telling you, that from the bottom, just take minus 10 pixel. And next to this, I want from left, just have a 0 pixel, just stick to the entire extreme left transform. Now transform is the property that we are going to use. Translate Y, which means on the vertical axis, I want it to be translated 100%, which means it is coming down 100% from the top. So as you can see, there is 10 pixel gap between here and it is entirely transformed on the y-axis towards downwards. So if you put minus here, it will be transformed towards the top, and if you put positive value here, it will transform to the lower end of the vertical axis. Now I want it to have a background color of white, so I'll say background color of variable white. Next to the background color, I want it to have a width of entire, because if you'll see, this is having a width of the content only. So I want it to have a width of 100% so that it takes the entire width. Perfect. Now you can see this is opening and closing really quick. So the next thing is border radius. I want it to be a little curved as well. So I'll say border radius. So I'm not giving just one value, I'm giving individual value for each corner. So 0 pixel, 0 pixel, 16 pixel, and 16 pixel. Perfect. Now if you'll see, the bottom corners are rounded, but not the top corners. So next thing is I want it to have a maximum height. Suppose if tomorrow I have 30 options, then I don't want it to spill over the entire screen. So I want it to have a maximum height of 310 pixel. You can choose any height that you want. But now what if there are more options? So obviously we need overflow as scroll. So if there are more options, this particular component is scrollable. So this is looking perfect. We just have to style each of this individual option right now. So for this, I'll just say drop down option, the singular one, and I want it to have a padding of 12 pixel, and we are done. Okay, drop down option. I guess we made some mistake here. Drop down option. So the class is perfect. Okay, this is padding. Now if you'll see, this is looking great. If I click any of the option, that particular option is selected, and yep. Now I have to give some styling for hover. So what I can say is drop down option, and if we hover over this, so for hovering, I want it to have a color of white, which means the color for my text should be white, but for the color of the background should be blue dark. So I'll say variable blue dark. Perfect. Now if you'll see, if I open this and if I hover over any of the text, any of the option, the color is changing. Now finally, I just want it to be a little responsive, because if you'll see it right now, if I go here and I do it like this is not responsive, right? So what I can do is I can just say @media only screen. So this is how you write responsive CSS styles. So media queries, these are called only screen, and so max width of let's say 600 pixel. You can choose any value, any breakpoint that you want, but I'm not making it very responsive, because based on the use case you can make it responsive. So here I just want to style three things. The heading, I want it to have a font size of let's say 20 pixel. If you'll see, it is looking like this. So let's do it like this. If you'll see, it is the font size is 20 pixel. It looks great. Next to the heading, we have drop down label. For this, I want it to have a font size of let's say 14 pixel. And finally, for my drop down component, if you'll see, yep, it looks great. So this is responsive now. So this is responsive. So this is it. I hope you learned a lot from this dropdown component, and if you want to use this such dropdown component in your application, you can use it as well. So if you have any doubt, do comment it out. And again, a huge shout out to Newton School for helping me make this video. Newton School is a platform where you can learn coding. Do check them out. The link is in the description. So far, if you haven't liked the video, do like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do subscribe it. I'll see you in the next video, where I'll be creating more such UI components, more such UI clones, and where I'll be teaching you how to be a better front-end developer. Till then, thank you. Bye bye.